Before we dive into the main content, let's apply some styling to the drop-down suggestions. In the Place Search Origin component, within the Render Suggestions function, add a class name to the li element. We can use bgblue100 for the background, mye2 for margin top and bottom, and cursor pointer for a pointer cursor. This will give the suggestions a more polished appearance. Alright, it's looking better now. Now let's explore what happens when you click on a result. First, open the console to see the outcome. Oh, it seems we haven't enabled the geocoding API yet. Let's take care of that by heading over to the Google Cloud Console. In the APIs and Services section, search for the geocoding API and simply enable it. Let's return to the browser and give it another shot. Search for something and click on a result. Good. It's working now. We have both latitude and longitude for this location. This information is being generated from the code inside the Place Search Origin API. It's all happening within the handle select function. Now, what other exciting possibilities can we explore here? How about this? When a user selects a place, we'll create a marker that shows up on the map. The marker's position will be determined by the latitude and longitude from the geocode. Let's dive in and make that happen. To achieve this, our initial step is to store the latitude and longitude in the component state. In the Place Search Origin component, start by importing the useState hook. Then, set up search origin latitude using const and set search origin latitude. Initializing it to null. Duplicate this line for longitude. Now, navigate to the handle select function. When we obtain the latitude and longitude, we store them in the state using set search origin latitude for latitude and set search origin longitude for longitude. Let's test this with the useEffect hook. Start by importing useEffect. Moving on to the code below the handle select function, we'll utilize useEffect to monitor changes in search origin latitude and search origin longitude. Inside the useEffect, we'll include a conditional check. If search origin latitude and search origin longitude. If that's the case, let's replace the console log in handle select with a new one using template literals. So, console.log backticks retrieved search origin latitude and search origin longitude from the Places API. Feel free to comment out the old console log in the handle select function. Now, let's give it a try in the browser. As you can see, it's working perfectly. Good. Now the question is, how can we provide the map component access to this geocoding information? To address this, let's examine the component structure. We have a parent page component, a server-side component with metadata, and its children include the request form and the map component. A viable solution is to store the geocode information in the state of this parent component. However, to achieve this, we'll need to convert this into a client component to make use of the useState hook. A more practical approach would be to create another parent component, which will encapsulate this JSX. Let's go ahead and create a new component called parent request component. Then we'll cut the entire JSX portion from the request page and paste it here. In this step, we'll import the request form component and the map component into the parent request component. Meanwhile, in the request page, we'll import the parent request component. And we will return this component right here. Let's not forget to make this parent request component a client-side component. Now let's head to the browser and test if everything is still working. Good. It's working perfectly. Now let's ensure that the map can access geocoding information from the Places API. To do this, using useClient and import the useState hook. Our goal is to store the latitude and longitude information in the state of this component, allowing the map component to access it. Let's quickly open the Place Search Origin component, cut these two variables, and paste them into the parent request component. We'll be passing these values down to the components below. For search origin latitude, set it as search origin latitude within curly brackets. Repeat this for search origin longitude and set search origin longitude. And the same for set search origin latitude. Now let's do the same for the map component. Copy these four constants and paste them here. Good. However, there is a problem here. We need to perform some component down drilling. Since the Place Search Origin component is a child of the request form component, we have to pass these props down to Place Search Origin. Let's begin by copying these four variables. Paste them here as props to this component, but these values inside the curly brackets need to be preceded by props dot. Let's pass the props to the component. We'll address this component drilling problem later in the course when we delve into the use context hook. Before we proceed to use these in the map, we'll make some adjustments in the Place Search Origin component. Start by passing the props to this component right here in the parentheses. Now scroll down to the geocode function. We need to make changes here as well. Replace set search origin latitude with props.set search origin latitude. And we'll do the same for the other variables. Prepend props dot for all of these. Now, let's test if everything is still functioning correctly. It's still working. Now, let's apply this in our map. Open the map component in VS Code. Put props in the parentheses. First, let's remove the existing marker and create a new one. Set the position of this new marker using props.search origin latitude for latitude and props.search origin longitude for longitude. Now, when you refresh the page, you might notice an error in the console. This occurs because initially, the latitude and longitude values are null. To prevent this error, we can conditionally render the marker component. How about we show this marker only when props.searchOrigin latitude is not null. And props.searchOrigin longitude is not null. Let's go back and refresh the page. Good. The error has disappeared. You can test it by searching for a place and selecting one. It's working perfectly now, except for one thing. We have to manually pan the map to locate the marker. How about we make the map automatically center itself on the marker's location when the user selects a place? We'll delve into that in the next lesson.